also hurled out into space every weapon at his command. Bombs, high-explosive shells, and deadly radio-dirigible torpedoes, all alike disappeared ineffectively in that redly murky veil of nothingness. And the fleet was being melted. In quick succession, the vessels flamed red, shrank together, gave out their air, and merged their component iron into the intensely red, sullenly viscous stream which was flowing through the impenetrable veil upon which Triplanetarians and pirates alike were directing their every possible weapon of offense. The last vessel of the Triplanetary armada converted, and the resulting metal stored away in their capacious reservoirs, the Nevians turned their attention upon the stronghold of the pirates. There ensued a battle royal. For this vast planetoid was no feeble warship, depending solely upon the limited power available in its accumulators. It was the product of a really mighty brain, a brain reinforced by the many perverted but powerful intellects which Roger had won over to his cause. It was powered by the incalculable force of cosmic radiation, powered to drive its unimaginable mass through space against any possible attractions for an indefinite number of years. It was armed and equipped to meet any emergency which Roger's coldly analytical mind had been able to foresee. The fact that the scientists of the Secret Service had discovered ultrawaves as yet unknown to him was unfortunate. That service was itself unfortunate, impenetrable as it was, and incorruptible. He could learn nothing whatever about it. He had heard vague rumors of certain experiments, but even if they should discover something, it would be too late to do them any good. Even without invisibility, he would have no trouble in annihilating the massed grand fleet of the Triplanetary League. He would very shortly collect his tribute and disappear. And this new enemy, himself invisible and armed with heretofore unknown weapons of dire power, who was apparently unaffected by his beams, even he would discover that Roger the Great was no puny opponent. He would analyze those unknown forces, regenerate them, and hurl them back upon their senders. Thinking thus, the man of gray sat coldly motionless at his great multi-shielded desk, whose top was now swung up to become a board of massed and tiered instruments and controls. He shut off his offensive beams and surrounded the entire planetoid with the peculiarly rigid and substantial shield which had so easily warded off Costigan's fiercest attacks. And that shield was more effective than even its designer had supposed. Gray Roger had built even better than he knew. For the voracious and all-powerful converting beam of the Nevians, below the level of the ether though it was, struck that perfectly transparent wall and rebounded, defeated and futile. Struck and rebounded, then struck and clung hungrily, licking out over that impermeable surface in darting tongues of red flame as the surprised Nerado doubled and then quadrupled his power. Fiercer and fiercer drove in the Nevian flood of force until the whole immense globe of the planetoid was one scintillant ball of scarlet energy. But still the pirate's shield remained intact. At what awful drain of resource Roger alone knew. "Here is the analysis of his screen, sir." A Nevian computer handed his chief a sheet of metal, upon which were engraved rows of symbols. "Ah, a six-phase polycyclic. A screen of that type was scarcely to have been expected from such a low form of life," Nerado commented, and rapidly adjusted the many dials and switches before him. As he did so, the character of the clinging mantle of force changed. From red, it flamed quickly through the spectrum, became unbearably violet, then disappeared, and as it disappeared the shielding wall began to give way. It did not cave in abruptly, but softened locally, sagging into a peculiar grouping of valleys and ridges, contesting stubbornly every inch of position lost. And Gray Roger knew that the planetoid was doomed. His supposedly impregnable screen was failing in spite of its utmost measure of energy, and, that defense down, the citadel would not last a minute. Therefore he summoned a chosen few of his motley crew of renegade scientists and issued brief instructions. For minutes a host of robots toiled mightily, Then a portion of the shield bulged out, extended into a tube beyond the attacking layers of force, and from it there erupted a beam of violence incredible, a beam behind which was every volt and ampere that the gigantic generators and accumulators of the planetoid could yield, a beam that tore screamingly through the ether, that by the very vehemence of its incalculable energy tore a hole through the redly impenetrable Nevian field, and hurled itself upon the inner screen of the fish-shaped cruiser in frenzied incandescence. And was there, or was there not, a lesser eruption upon the other side, an almost imperceptible flash, as though something had shot from the doomed planetoid out into space? Nerado's looped neck straightened convulsively as his tortured drivers whined and shrieked at the terrific overload, but Roger's effort was far too intense to be long maintained. Even before his accumulators failed, generator after generator burned out, the defensive screen collapsed, and the red converter beam attacked voraciously the unresisting metal of those prodigious walls. Soon there was a terrific explosion as the pent-up air of the planetoid broke through its weakening container, and the sluggish river of allotropic iron flowed in an ever larger stream, ever faster. "It is well that we have an unlimited supply of iron." Nerado tied a knot in his neck and spoke in huge relief. "With but the 7 pounds remaining of our original supply, I fear that it would have been difficult to parry that last thrust." "Difficult?" asked the second in command. "We would now be swimming in space. But what shall I do with this iron? Our reservoirs will not hold it all." "Seal up 1 or 2 of the lower storage compartments to make room for this lot. Immediately it is loaded, we return to Nevia. There we shall install reservoirs in all the spare space, and come back here for more." The last drop of the precious liquid secured, the vessel moved away, sluggishly now because of its prodigious load. In their quarters in the 4th section, the 3 terrestrials, who had watched with strained attention the downfall and absorption of the planetoid, stared at each other with drawn faces. Clio broke the silence. "Oh, Conway, this is ghastly. It's just simply perfectly horrible," she gasped, then recovered a measure of her customary spirit as she stared in surprise at Costigan's face. For it was thoughtful. His eyes were bright and keen. No trace of fear or disorganization was visible in any line of his hard young face. "It's not so good," he admitted frankly. "I wish I wasn't such a dumb cluck. If Lyman Cleveland or Ford Rodebush were here, they could help a lot. But I don't know enough about any of their stuff to flag a handcar. I can't even interpret that funny flash, if it really was a flash, that we saw." "Why bother about one little flash, after all that really did happen?" asked Clio, curiously. "You think Roger launched something? He couldn't have. I didn't see a thing," Bradley argued. "I don't know what to think. I've never seen anything material sent out so fast that I couldn't trace it with an ultra wave. But on the other hand, Roger's got a lot of stuff that I never saw anywhere else. However, I don't see that it has anything to do with the fix we're in right now. But at that, we might be worse off. We're still breathing air, you notice, and if they don't blanket my wave, I can still talk." He put both his hands in his pockets and spoke. "Sams? Costigan, put me on a recorder, quick. I probably haven't got much time." And for 10 minutes he talked, concisely and as rapidly as he could utter words, reporting clearly and exactly everything that had transpired. Suddenly he broke off, writhing in agony. Frantically he tore his shirt open and hurled a tiny object across the room. "Wow!" he exclaimed. "They may be deaf, but they can certainly detect an ultra wave, and the interference they set up on it is enough to pulverize your bones." "No, I'm not hurt," he reassured the anxious girl, now at his side. "But it's a good thing I had you out of circuit. It would have jolted you loose from 6 or 7 of your back teeth." "Have you any idea where they're taking us?" she asked soberly. "No," he answered flatly.